They were telling her to step back while the heart monitor was screaming. The sound cut through trauma too like a blade, sharp and unbroken, the kind that meant someone was seconds from dying. Rain hammered the glass doors of St. Augustine Medical Center, sirens still echoing outside, red light bleeding across the floor. On the gurney lay Captain Ethan Cole, late 30s, broad frame, slack, black tactical shirt shredded open, blood dark and spreading where it should not have been. A trident patch clung to his shoulder by a single torn stitch. "Move!" Dr. Richard Vaughan snapped without looking at her. His voice was clean, controlled. "A man used to being obeyed. You're new. You don't belong in this bay." Hannah Moore froze for half a breath. 34. Blue scrubs, a badge with a red sticker that said New Staff. She felt every eye skim past her, already dismissing her, already deciding she was in the way. The resident beside the bed swallowed hard. A nurse tightened her grip on a chart. No one argued. The monitor stuttered. The pitch climbed. Hannah watched the blood drip off the sheet and hit the floor, each drop loud in her ears. She knew that sound. She knew what came next. Hannah did not move when he told her again. She stood at the edge of the bay, just inside the curtain, hands loose at her sides, breathing slow while the room sped up around her. Gloves snapped. A blood pressure cuff screamed as it tightened. Someone said the numbers were dropping. Someone else said, "Prep for intubation." Dr. Vaughan leaned over the gurney, jaw set, eyes fixed on the body, like the problem would behave if he stared hard enough. "He's crashing," a resident said, voice thin. "We're losing him." The captain's hand twitched on the sheet. Once. Twice muscles tightened along his forearm, like cables pulled too fast. His chest hitched, breath shallow, uneven, fighting air that suddenly felt wrong. The oxygen mask hissed as it settled over his face. He turned his head sharply, eyes snapping open, unfocused, scanning the ceiling lights like search beams cutting through smoke. "Easy," a nurse murmured, reaching for his shoulder. The hand came up fast. Too fast. The mask cracked against the rail. Wires popped loose. "Don't touch me," Ethan rasped, the words dragged out of somewhere raw and old. The gurney shuddered as his body tensed, not confused, not drunk on pain, but alert in the way men get when they think the room is hostile. Hannah felt it in her bones before anyone said it out loud. This was not panic. This was a battlefield, waking up inside a hospital. Security rushed in hard enough to rattle the curtain rings. 2 men in dark uniforms, heavy belts, radios crackling, hands already out. Like that alone could control what was happening. "Hold him," one of them said, eyes locked on Ethan's shoulders. "Before he hurts someone." Dr. Vaughan nodded once, sharp and final, the way orders move when fear starts to leak into authority. "Pin him," he said. "Now." They stepped in together. Too close. Too fast. Ethan's gaze flicked over them, calculating. Not wild. Measuring. His fingers curled into the sheet, knuckles whitening, tendons standing out along his wrist. He bucked once, hard, the gurney jumping under his weight. An elbow caught a guard in the chest. Metal clanged. Someone swore. The monitor shrieked, losing rhythm, losing patience. "Restrain him," Vaughan barked. "I'm not losing this case." Hannah felt the room tilt. The air changed, thickened, like the second before a door blows inward. She saw it in Ethan's eyes, that narrowing focus, the moment when restraint turns into escalation. She saw where this ended if no one changed course. She stepped forward. "Hannah, get back!" Vaughan snapped, finally looking at her, irritation flashing hot. "You're not cleared for this." She ignored him. She stopped at the head of the bed, close enough to feel the heat coming off Ethan's skin, close enough that her voice would not need to rise. The guards froze, half a breath from grabbing him again, as Hannah leaned in, calm cutting through the noise, and prepared to say the words she had sworn she would never use again. She did not shout. She did not touch him. Hannah leaned just enough that her mouth was near his ear, the rest of the room blurring at the edges, voices turning distant, like sound underwater. Ethan's breath tore in and out, sharp, feral, eyes locked on the ceiling light, as if it were a flare burning through smoke. The guards hovered, muscles coiled. Dr. Vaughan opened his mouth to override her. She spoke first. 2 breaths, 6 words, low, even, placed like a hand on a weapon without pulling the trigger. The effect was immediate. Ethan froze mid-motion, breath catching halfway in. His fingers loosened their death grip on the sheet. The tension drained from his shoulders in a visible release, like cables going slack. His eyes snapped off the light and locked onto her face, pupils wide, searching, then steadying as recognition broke through the noise. The monitor stumbled, then found a rhythm again, imperfect but alive. No one moved. One guard's hand hovered inches from Ethan's wrist, unsure now. The other slowly stepped back. A nurse swallowed, hard. Dr. Vaughan stared at Hannah as if the floor had shifted under him. "Say it again," Ethan whispered, hoarse, human. Hannah held his gaze, unblinking. She repeated the words, calm as a promise kept under fire. The room exhaled, and in that silence, something irreversible happened. The quiet nurse with the red sticker was no longer invisible. Ethan's breathing slowed, not calm, but controlled, the way it does when someone is forcing themselves back into the present 1 second at a time. "Look at me," Hannah said quietly. Not a command, an anchor. His eyes stayed on hers, tracking the rise and fall of her chest, as if matching it by instinct. Around them, the room began to move again, cautiously. A nurse stepped in with new leads, hands shaking until Hannah shifted just enough to block Ethan's view of her. "Eyes here," Hannah murmured. He obeyed. Dr. Vaughan cleared his throat, sharp, defensive. "What did you just say to him?" The question carried accusation, authority scrambling to reassert itself. Hannah didn't answer. She watched Ethan's jaw unclench, the fight bleeding out of him in degrees. "Doc," Ethan whispered, the word rough but deliberate. "You're not dead." The air went tight. A resident blinked. Someone near the curtain stopped breathing for a beat too long. Hannah felt it then, the past pressing up through the floor, demanding space. She kept her face neutral, voice steady. "You're in Houston," she said. "You're in a hospital. You're safe enough for now." Ethan swallowed. His hand lay open on the sheet, no longer a weapon. Dr. Vaughan stared at Hannah's badge again, at the red sticker, at the woman he had just ordered out. Something in his certainty cracked, and the question no one was ready to ask yet hung in the room, heavy and unavoidable. Who exactly had they told to step back? Hannah stepped back half a pace, not retreating, just giving the room permission to breathe. "Get new vitals," Dr. Vaughan said, clipped now, control patched back together. Carefully. His eyes never left her. The guards withdrew to the curtain, uneasy, their hands empty but their posture still coiled. Ethan lay still, chest rising unevenly, sweat cutting clean lines down his temples. He looked exhausted, like someone who had just run a long distance inside his own head. Hannah's gaze dropped to his shoulder. The wound wasn't clean. It never had been. Burned edges, irregular tearing, tiny dark specks embedded where no straight round should have gone. She felt the old pattern click into place, muscle memory stirring before thought. "This isn't just a gunshot," she said. Calm, almost conversational. He took blast. Fragmentation. Vaughan scoffed, sharp. "We know there was an explosion." "You know it happened," Hannah replied. "You're treating it like it didn't matter." She pointed without touching, mapping an invisible arc through flesh and bone. That pressure didn't leave when the noise stopped. Ethan's eyes flicked to her again. "She's right," he said softly, like confirming weather. It came from the side. The room stilled. Vaughan's jaw tightened. For the first time, he wasn't sure who was leading anymore. The monitor changed its tone before anyone looked at the numbers. A jagged stutter cut through the room, sharp and wrong. "Pressure's dropping again," the resident said. "Too fast. Heart rate's climbing." Ethan's chest hitched, breath turning shallow, uneven, like something heavy had settled inside him. His head rolled slightly to one side, eyes glassing at the edges. "Prep for CT," Vaughan ordered. "We need images now." The authority was back in his voice, but it sounded thinner, stretched. A nurse reached for the mask again. "Wait," Hannah said. Not loud. Not soft. Final. She was already watching Ethan's neck, the veins standing out, the way the right side of his chest lagged behind the left. The room narrowed to those details. The hiss of oxygen, the squeak of the gurney wheels as they locked. "He's not failing because his heart forgot how to work," she said. "It's being squeezed." Vaughan bristled. "That's speculation." Ethan grimaced, a sound tearing out of him. "Feels like pressure," he muttered. "Like back then." The words landed. Hannah didn't look away. "You move him like this," she said, already adjusting the angle of the bed, "and you make it worse." The staff hesitated, caught between protocol and the woman who had already been right once. The room held its breath, waiting to see who would be wrong next. The CT suite was colder, brighter, the kind of sterile light that made every shadow look like a problem. Ethan sagged on the table as the scanner froze halfway through its cycle. The monitor spiked, then skidded sideways into chaos. "He's desatting," a tech said, voice cracking. Heart rate 160 and irregular. Dr. Vaughan stepped in, already pulling on gloves, eyes snapping to the crash cart as if it were an old friend. "Charge to 200, he said. "We're not losing him in a hallway machine." Hannah saw it all at once. The distended veins at Ethan's neck, the right side of his chest barely moving. The way each breath cost him more than the last. She stepped in before the paddles left the tray. "Stop," she said, sharp enough to cut. "You shock him now and you'll kill a heart that's fighting a problem it can't solve." Vaughan glared. "He's in a malignant rhythm." "He's drowning," Hannah said. From the inside, a resident lifted a stethoscope, hands shaking, listened left, then right. His face drained. "There's nothing on the right," he whispered. Silence fell hard, and in that silence, Hannah reached for a needle. She did not ask for permission. Hannah marked the space with 2 fingers, counting ribs by feel, the way her hands remembered even when her mind tried not to. Second intercostal, mid-clavicular, right side. The needle felt light and heavy at the same time. Around her, the room went very still. The defibrillator whined, charged and waiting, like a threat on pause. "Clear," someone started to say. "Not yet," Hannah cut in, already moving. "On 3. She didn't wait for agreement. 1. Ethan's eyes fluttered, unfocused, breath scraping. 2. Every face in the room locked on her hand. 3. The needle went in. There was resistance, then give. A thin hiss escaped, sharp and unmistakable. Air rushing out of a place it never should have been. Ethan gasped, deeper this time, chest rising more evenly. The monitor stuttered, then steadied, numbers clawing their way back from the edge. The paddles lowered. The whine faded. "Vitals are improving," the resident said, disbelief breaking through his voice. Hannah held the needle steady, jaw tight, watching Ethan's color creep back. Dr. Vaughan stared at the monitor, then at her, realization landing slow and heavy. The woman he had dismissed had just pulled a man back from death with one clean decision. The room exhaled in fragments. Hands moved again, slower now, more careful, like everyone had learned something without being told. The crash cart was rolled back. The CT tech wiped shaking palms on his scrubs. Ethan's breathing settled into something rough but workable, each inhale no longer a fight. His eyes cracked open, finding Hannah through the blur, the way a compass needle finds north without knowing why. "Tuesday," he rasped. Hannah leaned in just enough to hear him. "What? That's what we used to call it," he said, the corner of his mouth twitching despite the pain. "When pressure tried to crush you." She huffed a quiet breath. "Here we call it surviving." Dr. Vaughan cleared his throat, the sound stiff with swallowed pride. "Needle decompression," he said for the record, as if naming it gave him back some ground. Hannah didn't argue. She stepped aside, giving the team room to secure the line, already thinking 3 steps ahead. "Get him to the OR," she said. "Now that his heart has space." Vaughan met her eyes. For a second, the power balance shifted, unmistakable. "Good call," he said, clipped but real. Hannah nodded once. Not victory, just truth. And as they wheeled Ethan away, every person in that room knew the rules had quietly changed. The doors to the operating wing swallowed the gurney and shut, sealing the noise behind glass. Hannah stayed where she was, hands still, pulse loud in her ears now that the room had stopped screaming. The resident who had listened to the chest stared at her like he'd just learned a new language. "You did that like you've done it before," he said, not accusing, wondering. She didn't answer. She was watching the numbers disappear down the hall, watching life move when it had nearly stopped. Dr. Vaughan lingered, coffee gone cold in his hand, authority settling into something quieter. "I assumed," he said, and let the word hang, sharp and unfinished. She met his gaze. "People usually do." He nodded once, small. "I won't again." A man in a grey jacket waited near the nurse's station, posture too straight for family, shoes too clean for rain. He watched Hannah without staring, eyes measuring, filing. When their gazes met, he gave the slightest nod, like a door cracking open. The hospital kept moving around them, ordinary emergencies piling up. But something else had begun. A record had shifted. A name had resurfaced. And the night wasn't done asking questions. The man in the grey jacket stepped closer, stopping just outside her personal space. "Ms. Moore," he said, voice smooth, practiced, the kind used in briefings, not waiting rooms. "Daniel Brooks, Department of Defense Liaison." He flipped an ID and put it away just as quickly, as if the proof mattered less than the timing. A senior nurse drifted past, eyes flicking between them, already sensing this was not hospital business. "I was told you stabilized Captain Ethan Cole," Brooks continued. "Not a question. Security couldn't. Sedation didn't. You did." His gaze was steady, curious without warmth. "You used language that doesn't belong in a civilian trauma bay." Hannah felt the old instinct tighten her spine. "I did my job." Brooks nodded, like he'd expected that answer. "So did you, back then." He held out a thin envelope. No markings, just her name. Not Hannah Moore. The other one. The name she hadn't used in years. Her fingers hovered before taking it. The paper felt heavier than it should have. "That file was sealed," she said. "It was," Brooks replied. Tonight changed that. Down the hall, alarms rang for someone else. The hospital moved on. But for Hannah, the ground shifted. Whatever she'd buried hadn't stayed buried, and whatever came next would not ask politely. Ethan woke under softer light, the kind that didn't glare or interrogate. The ICU hummed in low, steady rhythms. Machines breathed with him, not against him. His shoulder burned, deep and honest, the pain of something that had been opened and put back together. He turned his head slowly and found Hannah standing in the doorway, arms folded loose, like she was giving him space on purpose. "You're real," he said, voice rough but anchored. "So are you," she replied. He watched her for a moment, eyes clearing, memory sliding into place with careful clicks. "They told us you didn't make it," he said. "Night glass. We put your name on a wall. His throat worked. I believed it. Hannah stepped closer, stopping at the foot of the bed. A lot of people did. Ethan pushed himself up a fraction, ignoring the protest from his shoulder. His left hand rose, unsteady but deliberate, fingers straightening into a salute that wasn't perfect and didn't need to be. The room stilled. For the record, he said, eyes locked on hers. This hospital didn't save my life tonight. You did. Hannah didn't return the salute. She lifted her hand halfway instead, palm open, acknowledging the truth without ceremony. Around them, the monitors kept time. Alive. Morning crept in without ceremony, a pale light sliding through the high windows as the hospital stitched itself back together. Hannah stood at the nurse's station, charting like nothing in the world had tilted overnight, like she hadn't cracked open something buried and lived to watch it breathe. Down the hall, Ethan slept, monitored and stubbornly alive, his name now spoken with a different weight. Doctor. Vaughn passed once, slowed, nodded. No speeches. Just acknowledgement. The man in the grey jacket was gone, envelope tucked where it would not be forgotten, a quiet promise that the past does not stay quiet forever. Hannah checked a blood pressure, adjusted an IV, listened to a frightened voice steady itself under her hands. The work continued. It always did. But something had changed in the air. The quiet ones were being watched now. The overlooked counted. The rules had shifted without asking permission. She finished the note, capped the pen, and looked once toward the elevators leading up, then back to the board glowing with new names. Another shift, another line to step up to. If this story moved you, take a moment to like and subscribe, and comment 3 words below. Share your thoughts.